Last week, I made the embiggen effect and made a display for the marbles. Those three figures look so much better together. The original version's a bit of a letdown. Check that video out if you're interested. Speaking of letdown, Phase 5 randomly started with Quantumania. And instead of starting the phase with a bang, the movie had one of the most underwhelming endings. And that's a bummer because the movie had so much potential. And not just that, the Quantumania figures are actually excellent. One of the reasons why it took me this long to get to Antman is because I thought these figures were awesome and I didn't need to do anything to them. Let's deconstruct this figure. There's an FAQ on the paint and brushes I use in the description box below. The Quantumania figures are some of the best MCU figures out there. Okay, I know Green Goblin is finally out. I'll get there, soon. I have to give Hasbro credit. They seem to have stopped using that ugly orange red. The red they used here is great, and I believe they painted most, if not all, the red areas. Not just that, the paintwork is also very clean too. Another thing I love is the matte plastic. It doesn't look or feel cheap at all. And that's Scott Lang head. It looks just like Paul Rudd. It's so much better than the previous version. The only thing that looks subpar is the helmet. There's minimal paint on it and it's missing quite a bit of details on the mouthpiece. But with that Scott Lang head, I feel like most people are going to display theirs unmasked. With that said, there are missing paint details on this figure. It's mainly the thin silver accents all over the suit. I understand why they skipped it. The majority of people won't even notice them. I only really noticed them after looking at a bunch of reference images. I am a bit nervous about adding them back in due to how thin they are, but I'm gonna try. Hello, this is Ken. I like making things. I like making things out of paper, and I like making things cooler. Especially my figures. Sometimes figures don't look all that screen accurate. All they need is a bit of touch-up here and there to unleash their hidden potential. I also love using everyday tools and materials to recreate iconic scenes from my figures, so they can shine on my display. Subscribe to my channel and join my DIY adventure as I ask myself the same question every week. Can I make it? There are two ways I can approach this. One way to do this is to do the silver first and use the red and black paint to clean up the lines to ensure they're straight and crisp. Kinda like what I did with Venom and Symbiote Spider-Man, but I'm gonna go with the more challenging approach this time. I'm gonna avoid doing any cleanup work. Normally, I would use a wet brush to clean up any mistakes, but it's not gonna be that useful here because metallic paint has these micro-reflective specks in them. If I wipe it off with a wet brush, I'm just gonna spread the little specks all over the plastic, making the cleanup work even more tedious. Another reason why I want to be as precise as possible and not do any cleanup work is because I really like the black plastic. The plastic they use really captured that leathery suit texture. I don't need to alter it at all. So, in order to create crisp, clean lines, I need to use a fine detailing brush with no fraying bristles. I usually use the same 3 brushes over and over again. I'm not always gentle with them, rubbing them harshly against the surface to blend the colors. That is why some of them look a bit funky, but I treat my fine detailing brushes very differently. I try my best not to be rough with them, and I clean the bristles as soon as I'm done. That way, the paint won't dry on the bristles and ruin the shape. Another tip is to make sure you brace your arm against something. It could be the desk or your body. I have my elbow pushing against my torso, and my pinky resting on the figure. This way, I can do smoother, more precise strokes by only flicking the wrist. I also prefer having minimal paint on the brush. You want the brush to evenly distribute the paint on the surface. If you load the brush with too much paint, a significant amount of it is going to stick to the surface if you apply too much pressure. But, if you have really good hand-eye coordination, you can do longer strokes with more paint. This will create clean, even lines. Too bad I'm not that advanced yet. That's why you see me do mostly short strokes. I'm also only going to do one side on camera. This isn't the best angle for me to do fine details. It will be much easier for me if I hold the figure closer to my face. The good thing is, all these silver details are already molded in, and they're slightly raised too, It makes painting them a bit easier. Not much, just a bit. Oh, it appears that the belt buckle is also missing a bit of silver at the top and the bottom. Let me add them back in. I'm also adding a bit of silver on the other silver parts of the belt, so the plastic and my silver paint blend together. Alright, just a bit more silver on the back. Okay, that took a long time, but I believe I've added all the silver lines. Because these lines are everywhere on the figure, there's a high chance of me accidentally rubbing the paint off, especially since these lines are so thin. So I'm gonna seal the paint with the matte spray. Done. Oh wait, not done. I forgot about the gauntlets. Let me go over the gauntlets with the silver to make them a bit more metallic. Oh, the gauntlets extend down to the back of his hands. This is gonna need a couple of layers to get to full opacity. Alright, on to the details. The gauntlets are actually mostly black with silver accents when you think about it. Or are they? Anyway, I actually really appreciate that everything is sculpted in. It kinda feels like I'm filling in a coloring book. The key is to make sure the edges are as clean as possible. And finally, the red. I can leave it as is, but I want the red to be a bit more vibrant or bold. There are several spots where the red paint is a bit patchy, but this step isn't that easy either. I want to retain the texture, so I gotta keep the paint relatively thin. And I gotta make sure I don't accidentally paint over the silver lines. I'm not doing those again. Look at that. The red looks so nice now. Time to add some shine to the gauntlets. I want the gauntlets to have a reflective finish, so I'm going to go over them with a glossy varnish. This will also seal the paint and add a bit of protection against paint rub. I'm also applying the varnish over the belt, so it stands out a bit more against the suit. Oh, and the stripes on the chest too. They appear to have a shine to them as well. On to the heads. Let's start with Scott. I love what they've done. Look at those stubbles. They totally nailed it. I'm not going to do any major changes to the face. I'm going to first mattify and tone down the face slightly. When I look at Paul Rudd's face, I notice that the area around his cheeks is usually red. So I'm going to replicate that by adding a tiny amount of red onto his cheeks. I gotta be careful not to overdo it. Otherwise, it will look like he's blushing. And a bit more red on his lips as well. They gave him really pale lips. Oh, the eyebrows are also quite faint. Let me darken them too. And last but not least, his hair. I just need to mattify them a bit. And here's Scott Lang's head. The original head is pretty spot on already. The darker eyebrows and the painted lips made it look even more like Paul Rudd. Onto the helmeted head. I actually don't have any of the other regular sized Antman. I do have the Giant Man though. That one wasn't too bad. This helmet is way better than the one from the Quantum Suit 2-pack, but it still looks pretty bland. The top of the helmet seems to be made out of this carbon fiber material, so I'm gonna give it a gunmetal color. As for the rest of the helmet, it's missing a lot of those black details. There's this black stripe right below the red one, and every other ring on this mouthpiece are black as well. The tips of the ears are also black. Almost there. Oh man, that's actually quite a lot of missing details. Alright, that's looking much better. Now let's make the helmet look more metallic. I should have sanded the helmet first. It will make the paint application a bit smoother. And to make it even shinier, I'm gonna add a thin coat of glossy varnish over the helmet except for the areas with the carbon fiber texture. Alright, the helmeted head is done. Okay, I have to admit, despite all the missing details, the original head didn't look that bad. They kept the most crucial elements and omitted the more minor details. But before I do the final comparison, There's one more thing I want to make. Last week I was going to use clear plastic for Ms. Marvel's embiggen effect, but I ended up using resin instead because it was too complicated. But I think I can make the quantum portal with this. The quantum portal is mostly orange and blue, and has this fracturing effect on the outer edges. I'm going to do the fracturing effect last. Let me start by using a blue marker to sketch out the center of the portal. I can't really see the color. Let me try a darker blue. Okay, this one shows up better. The issue is that I can't really smudge the color like I do with paint. It dries too quickly. So I'm going to try smudging with alcohol. Let's see. It works. Oh, oops. I got too into it and wiped it all off. Okay, let's try again. I just gotta let the alcohol evaporate a bit first, so there's minimal alcohol on the paper, and smear the marker this way. And I'm gonna do the same with the yellow marker. Okay, this yellow is too sheer too. Let me try it with the orange. Still sheer, but I think I can get a gradient effect with this. Alright, let's smudge. This is what I got. Is this a fail? It's still very sheer. What if I do the same thing on the back side? Maybe that'll increase the opacity. It's showing up better, but it still doesn't have that gassy look to it. Okay, I'm gonna try another technique. I'm gonna wet my brush and dab a bit of acrylic paint onto the plastic. The water will dilute the paint so it spreads on the surface. And most importantly, it won't dry fully opaque. But I'm gonna have to do this off camera. I need to place this plastic flat so the water doesn't drip off to one side. While I'm waiting, do you remember the other quantum portal I made? The one in Louis' van. That was cool. Oh, the paint has dried. Ta-da! Look at that. That turned out amazing. What I did was that I dabbed some white paint in the middle and a bit of orange around the edges, and a bit of yellow in between the two. Now let me cut it out. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but let me work on the fracturing effect next. I noticed that the fractures look like a bunch of rectangles, kinda like bricks, so I'm going to use the remaining piece of plastic and cut out a bunch of rectangles. I'm going to highlight the edges of these rectangles with the orange and yellow markers so that when I attach them onto the portal, it will give me that brick-like pattern. Now I just gotta glue these pieces along the perimeter. But that circular cutout is bothering me a lot. Let me try this. I'm gonna go around the perimeter and cut out some irregular rectangular shapes, so the edge is a bit more jagged. Ooh, look at that. It looks so good. Now let me attach some support pieces so it can stand on its own. I'm going to use UV resin as my glue because it cures clear, and it's a little easier to handle than super glue. That said, it is quite challenging to hold the pieces in place and turn on the UV light at the same time. I wish I have 3 hands. But here we go. The portal now stands on its own. Nice. To make the rest of the process less of a hassle, I'm going to pour out some UV resin away from the UV light. But for this video, I'm going to put it here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm dipping the very bottom of the rectangular pieces into the resin and then attaching them onto the portal. The UV resin won't activate or cure until it's under the UV light. I'm also trying to cure some of the rectangular pieces at an angle to give the portal more of a 3D look. UV resin creates a very strong bond, but it's not indestructible, so I still have to be careful and gentle handling the portal. The other thing I gotta watch out for is making sure the resin is fully cured and is not getting onto my skin. I made America Chavez's star portal in a similar manner, but I used hot glue for that. I can probably use it here too, but the consistency may be too thick for what I'm trying to achieve. Ooh, look how beautiful the portal looks under the UV light. Alright, the portal is finished. I did the rest of the pieces off camera. I love this. It looks close enough to the real deal. Alright, here's Antman all finished. The painted version pops so much more, it's kinda crazy. That said, it does kinda look like it was over-designed. There's too much going on. It's a bit too busy. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? Do you think Hasbro has done a good job? Don't get me wrong, I still really like the more screen-accurate version. The more vibrant red along with the silver accents are very pleasant to look at. And the Paul Rudd face. It looks so lifelike. One of the best MCU heads ever. That's not the case for the helmet though. You can definitely tell there are missing paint details on the helmet. And that silver plastic looks quite cheap. Overall, I think my painting skills have improved. The paint on the upper body looks so clean. Okay, the lines on the legs are a bit shaky, but it's okay. My eyes are drawn to the upper torso most of the time, so don't really notice the legs. Geporto looks amazing, but it's a bit on the small side. For some reason, I thought I made it bigger, but it's okay. I can just place it closer to the camera to make it bigger. Alright, let's end this for the photo shoot. I really like this figure. I love it when figures are not only posable, but the joints are well hidden too. This is one of those figures. The shoulders, elbows, and knee joint just blend in with the figure. It makes the figure look so much more premium. Even the hip joints don't look all that bad. I may not love the plastic they used on the helmet, but I love that they always include Scott's eyes behind the visors. They could have easily skipped that. Speaking of Scott, I love this head so much. It's not just the sculpt, it's the print tech they did too. I love what they did with the stubble. They even added those details around the eyes. I only had to do minor adjustments to the face. Overall, I highly recommend this figure, especially if you're an Antman fan. The movie might have been disappointing, but this figure is not. And this design really grows on you. Alright, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Give it a like and subscribe to see more content like this. I did get the new No Way Home figures, so I'll be working on those soon. Until then, stay inspired and I'll see you soon. I can make it, so can you.